Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Radical Candor podcast. I'm Kim Scott.
I'm Amy Sandler, and today we're talking about something that, Kim, you often talk about, which is how relationships don't scale, but culture does. First of all, before I go any further, do you still agree with that, this idea that you can't scale your relationships, but you do that through culture?
Yeah, I mean, you're not scaling your relationships through culture, but culture does scale and relationships don't scale. Yes, I still agree with that.
Okay, cool. So we have a question from a listener about what can you do when you just can't clone yourself? And by the way, we may be able to do that down the road. That's a different podcast. This
Yes.
question from our listener, they write, quote, I frequently work with manufacturing teams where managers often have 30 to 50 direct reports on the shop floor. What is your recommendation for how to do effective one-on-one meetings in this environment where there's often not an office or place to talk privately? Having great one-on-ones is easier to do when you've got 3 to 5 direct reports and work in an office environment. But I'm curious as to practical tips and tools you recommend in a manufacturing environment with a large number of direct reports, and also with a large number of direct reports in general. Thank you.
I love this question. It is so important because a lot of people do have way more direct reports than it's possible to have I mean, you cannot have 50 real, deep, meaningful relationships. You just can't. There's not, but human beings do not scale, which is why relationships don't scale. And so, what can we do? What can a person do who has this many direct reports? I think that the important thing in this kind of situation is to create an environment in which people know that they have a way to be heard. They know they have a way to fill in complaints and to file complaints in a way that they can be heard. And with that many direct reports, if you took questions and criticism, solicited criticism from all 50 people, if you also just asked for suggestions from 50 people, you'd burn out almost instantly. In Radical Candor, I talk about this moment where pretty soon I was soliciting great ideas from the team, and pretty soon I didn't want to hear any more great ideas because every great idea came with action items for me,
Mhm.
and I couldn't take all those action items. I was just one person. And so one of the things that I would recommend is to create sort of like an ideas team with people where everyone can submit suggestions, complaints, things are broken, and this team of people will figure out which ones are going to have the most impact, which ones are the most important ones to fix, and they can suggest to the manager, they can ask for, 3 or 4 actions for the manager to take each week, but not 30 or 50. And that way, the team feels like they're a little bit. You're giving the team a way to sort of self-manage in this case, since you really cannot manage 50 people in the way that I recommend in Radical Candor. So I know that's not an exact answer to the one-on-one, but that's one suggestion. In terms of one-on-ones with 30 to 50 direct reports.
And Kim, before we go on to that,
Mhm.
I'm really curious with your ideas team and people can submit complaints, things are broken, et cetera. How do you think about like is the ideas team, is that more about processes or specific work product rather than, oh, I'm frustrated by colleague A said this in a meeting, or sort of more interpersonal stuff? Like where would you put that kind of a complaint?
So if you have a frustration with a team member, this is where Radical Candor becomes really important. The most scalable thing is to create a culture in which if you have a problem with someone, you go talk to that person directly. And 9 times out of 10, you could probably sort it out. And if you can't sort it out, then you go together to the manager. And so what the ideas team is more ideas about the way we're working together. anything that's frustrating you, from furniture to strategy, I would say, but not your team members. You should be radically candid with your
Yep.
team members. By the way, I'm not selling. I have no financial arrangement with this company, but there's a company called Joyous, and they have built a system that will create an ideas team for you, and identify the right person to create fixes for the great ideas that come out of your team.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that is one of the ways that technology can support that, and just acknowledging it can be very helpful just to speak to the manager, somebody who's asking the question, whether it's our listener or someone else, that what you're saying is on the ideas team. I think being really clear that we're talking about processes or work product, and that we really do encourage you to build that culture of radical candor, so they don't think that's just a place to drop personal frustrations, to be very clear about
Well, they could be personal frustrations, but not personal frustrations with other people.
frustrations about actual persons.
Yes, about yes, yes, exactly,
Okay, cool.
exactly.
So, all right. So you talked about the ideas team,
So,
and
and
yeah,
by the way, the reason why I started with the ideas team is that one of the most important goals of a one-on-one meeting is to listen to each of your direct reports. And you really cannot listen to 30 to 50 people every week. It's not possible. But the ideas team creates kind of a culture of listening, so that people have a way to talk to each other about some of the things that you might be talking to them about if you only had 3 to 5 instead of 10 times that many direct reports. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
So that's number one. So taking a step back to thinking about one-on-one meetings, the purpose of a one-on-one meeting is to listen to people and to help them clarify their ideas, because new ideas are fragile and so easily trampled. So you want to create systems where people are doing that for each other, and as an alternative to a regularly scheduled
And so
one-on-one.
just, yeah, so kind of building that, a tool like a Joyous or the ideas team can kind of scale that listening for you, because you can only do so much intentional one-on-one listening.
Yeah. So when I started the ideas team, it was really just a shared document. So I don't
Okay.
know in a manufacturing environment if people have their phones with them and can access shared documents. If that doesn't work, it could be a big piece of paper where people or a physical box where people drop ideas in,
Mhm.
if a shared document doesn't work. The nice thing about a shared document is that people can upvote or downvote. So if you don't have a shared document, you could have like a board where people can put ideas, and then they can put check marks next to the ideas they like, or something like that. So that's number one, is you want to create this culture of listening, so that people, even though you as their manager can't hear every single person, every single idea, there's a way for people to get their ideas heard. And the reason why this is important is, because you care about people and it's emotionally important for them to be heard, but it's also important for business reasons, because the best ideas are going to come from each of the people on the shop floor. Every single person on that shop floor has a great idea for ways to work that are going to either improve efficiency, or tasks that are getting done that you could stop doing, which would improve efficiency, or ways to work that are more fun, where people would enjoy their job more if this irritant or that irritant were removed. This is not a shop floor kind of thing, but one of the stories from Joyous that I most like is a big telecommunications company was using Joyous. And there were people who worked for this telecommunications company that had to go out and repair physical lines in vans. And there was a particular wrench that was needed, like, 20% of the time, and the wrench was not kept in all the vans. And so when the workers needed that wrench, they had to drive all the way back to HQ and then go back
Threw a real wrench in things.
Yeah, threw a monkey wrench. It made things way less efficient, way more expensive. And it was irritating. Not only
Yeah.
was it more expensive for the company, it was sort of boring and irritating for uh, the person who was supposed to fix the line. And this complaint came up a lot in the Joya system, and so they put the wrench in the van, and everybody was happier, and it saved the company a lot of money. So happiness and saving money tend to go hand in hand, and even more than that, happiness and innovation go hand in hand. And so when people are not burnt out or frustrated by their working environment, they tend to not only quit doing inefficient things, they have great ideas for things that'll actually make money. So it's good on cost savings, good on innovation too. So that's number one is try to figure out a way for the team to talk to each other to sort of self manage, and an ideas team is one idea. However, you do still want to have a relationship with these 30 to 50 people. And so there are a couple of specific things that I recommend. Um, One typical solution to this problem is somebody might try to have office hours in lieu of one-on-ones. And that's a good instinct, but the problem with office hours, in my experience, is that if you offer office hours to 30 to 50 people, the same three cranks are going to come
Mhm.
see you every single week. Or maybe they're not cranks, but
Yeah.
whatever. The same three people. Maybe they're wonderful people, but you want to hear from everyone. So, what I recommend instead of doing that is one, to book an hour a week or maybe even an hour a day, depending, to just walk around. And this is an old idea. This is not my idea. Management by walking around. I think Abraham Lincoln used to do that. So lots of great leaders have managed by walking around. And the idea is that you want to walk around and you notice someone uh, who you haven't talked to before, and you stop and you just ask them, "How's it going? You know, what's going on? What is there something I could do or stop doing that would make your day better?" So you have these conversations with people, or you notice things that are broken. Like at one point when I was working at Google, I was I we had some sort of, I don't know, party, and everybody had gone back to work, and I came out of my office and I noticed there was a couch in the wrong place. And so I started pushing the couch back to the right place where it was supposed to go. And this one guy on the team came up and he was just making a joke. I still am friends with this guy. I like this guy, but he was like, "Oh, ha ha, Kim, you got a new job." And it really made me stop in my tracks. And I'm like, you don't want to work at a company where everybody has these narrow job descriptions. I don't want to work at a company where everybody has these narrow job descriptions. Like, if you see something messed up, you fix it. And so and then there became this like theme on AdSense, we move the couches. and I was talking to someone who's still at Google, still works on that team, and they said they still say that. They still say, and I left Google in 2010, I think, a long time ago now. So you can have a big cultural impact just by walking around, noticing things, and fixing them yourself. Like, you're not above any job. That has a big impact.
Yeah, it's such a great story, and I'm curious, Kim, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of somebody whose manager hasn't been doing this, and now all of a sudden they're walking and they're coming over to me and they're like, "How's it going?" And I'm trying to think the best, but knowing that my tendency might be like, "Wait, what did I do wrong? Why are they starting this new thing?" So, how might a manager want to tee this up to assuage any concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is when you're walking around, you're never walking around to punish anyone. So you're not going to, the first time you do this, people might be nervous. And the only way out is through. It's going to be, it might feel uncomfortable. And there's no way you can make it comfortable from the outset. You have to prove over time that you're
Yeah.
not walking around to punish people, you're walking around to help them. You want them to be excited to see you coming, that you don't want them to feel a sense of dread
Yeah.
at your coming. And I think you raise a really good point, which is they're likely to feel a sense of dread
Yeah,
when you
especially if it's
come.
something new and it's sort of, and I think that's why your story is so great, because not only are you seeing you do the great work, but again, it's like practicing radical candor, starting by asking for feedback, but it's not just a one-off. It has to be an ongoing practice and rewarding the candor, or else people are going to think that they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people need to realize that when you're walking around, things are getting better because you're walking around. They're
Yeah.
not getting worse. And I think the other thing, excuse me, that's
Mhm.
important to realize, you're the one who's sick, but I'm the one who's coughing.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the
It's
important,
you're mirroring me, like you're the bridge that you really like.
yes, exactly. Exactly. So I think it's really important to realize that because if you're the manager, you have a little bit of power in the situation, that you are likely to elicit fear when you walk around. So it is your job to become approachable and to make people realize the reason you're walking around is you really care about everybody, you really care about this team, and you want to make things better, not worse.
I think it's such a great note. I'm glad that you mentioned it, and I'm curious, like especially if somebody was going to do this, you had recommended, once a week or even more if possible. Do you have a recommendation for? I mean, for people, some people this might come really naturally, the checking in and the how's it going and what can I do for you. But for people that feel maybe less comfortable with that kind of small talk, do you have any tips? I mean, you talked about having that go-to question, but any other just conversation starters that you find helpful for folks that might feel a little nervous about what to say?
Yeah, I totally, first of all, if you hate small talk, I hate small talk too.
Yeah.
I feel you. It feels like a total waste of time. Remember that you have a purpose. You have a reason for going around. And the reason for going around is because you're going to learn important things about what is really happening. So be genuinely curious. I mean,
Yeah.
all those people that are working are making an important contribution to the work, to getting things done. And so you want to make sure that you go out there like, oh, I'm going to learn something new.
Yep.
And even if you are shy, you probably like the idea of learning something new. I'm going to make life a little better today. Like you're not going to solve everything and people are still going to be unhappy. But who doesn't want to make life a little better today? So those are the kinds of, because if I could, I wouldn't even leave my house. I would sit in my garage all day, every day. Uh, there's value in getting out there.
Yeah, and you said two really important things, genuine and curiosity. And I think people can totally sense if it's genuine, even if you don't say it just the right way. And I think with curiosity, asking questions and really, like you said, like what can I learn? What can I learn from you? And I think the genuineness is huge. So,
Yeah,
yep,
and so I can't do the math this fast, but the last thing I will recommend is um, say you have 45 people. You want to think about I would like to do once a day, 3 15-minute one-on-ones and try to kind of have them maybe spread out throughout the day because each person is going to have such a different energy. Like one person you're going to need to console, and the next person you're going to need to consolidate with. And if you have one-on-one meetings with different people back to back, you wind up with emotional whiplash, in my experience. So I would try to reserve 3 15-minute slots a day to have one-on-ones with people, and cycle through the team in some predictable way. This is kind of a scheduling hassle, but if you can swing it, I think that would be really helpful. So you do get a little bit of one-on-one time, but you got to have low expectations of how much you can say
Yeah.
in 15 minutes, how much you're going to get to. You're not going to build this deep relationship with someone.
What do you, given that, and that there's, you talk a lot in one-on-ones about how, it's in service of the direct report's agenda. You're there to clear obstacles. You're there to solicit feedback. If they could only do one thing in that 15 minutes, what is the top priority?
I think the top I'm going to do two. I'm not going to answer your question.
Okay.
I'm going to do two things. I would spend sort of 12 minutes, so the vast majority of that 15 minutes. I would spend, what's on your mind? Like anything's
Mhm.
fair game from furniture to strategy. I would ask people to come with an agenda. If they come in and they say, I don't really have anything to talk to you about, say, well, why don't we take 3 minutes of silence? And you think about it. It's okay that you didn't prepare. Like, don't get mad at them, but don't let them off the hook either. And it'll be an uncomfortable. But I promise you, if you say I'm going to give you 3 minutes to think about it, that person will think. In fact, somebody I coached just did this, and he was like, "Wow, that really worked." People would come into his one-on-one, and they'd say, "I don't have anything," and he would say, "Okay, well, you can have the time back." And I said, "Just give them a few minutes." And he said, I'm learning all kinds of stuff. So really let people know that they should come prepared with an agenda and listen to that agenda, whatever it is. Try to respond. Your goal here is to listen to people, to help them clarify their thinking, and then to help them figure out what to do next. It's really important in that 12 minutes. Somebody's going to come in and they're going to say, like, this machine is broken. Why haven't you fixed it? Don't accept that task. It's not your job to fix it. It's your job to help them figure out how to get it fixed, right? Um, because if you try to, everybody's going to have a complaint when they come in. And if you try to address every complaint, and you're having 3 one-on-ones a day, you're going to start canceling those one-on-ones, I can promise you. So don't take on everyone's problems.
That is so interesting. Okay, so you're saying I'm complaining because the machine I'm working on is broken.
Yeah.
And so you want me to figure out how I'm gonna get it fixed rather than dumping it into your lap, right? I mean,
Ye
you're gonna help me though. You're gonna
Yes.
help me
Yes.
with it, but you want me to take some ownership of the broken machine.
Yes.
Okay.
Because a manager of 50 people cannot fix everything that's broken. And there's a lot with 50 people, I can
There's gonna be a lot broken.
and a whole there's gonna be a lot of shit that is suboptimal. And it's tempting to deal with that by not knowing about it. But that's really not productive. That's denial. But
So
if
how do you find that balance? Like, how do you know when you have to jump in and when you're really wanting the direct report? I mean, is it really just a matter of being very clear about sort of who's ultimately responsible for what?
I mean, it helps to be, but you're never going to be able to predict all the
Yeah.
things that are so. There's no amount you can't clarify your way out of this. Uh, I don't think. There's no amount of clarity of roles that will, because something's going to break that's in between two people. And so your job as the boss, where there's all this shit
Yeah.
is breaking and is suboptimal and everything could be better. And sometimes things are really disastrously bad. Uh, and your job is to know about it without freaking out. Uh, that's your job. And to figure out you can't fix everything, but to figure out productive ways for people to move in the direction of a solution to most of these problems. I mean, there are things that it's truly your job to fix. I mean, if somebody comes and tells you you devastated so and so on the team with something you said, like that's your job to fix that, right? But knowing that, there is, there's, let's say, the go back to the broken machine. There's probably a machine shop. Like, did you talk to so and so? And they don't have any time to fix it. Well, maybe send it to the ideas team. Like, help the team learn and make yourself vulnerable. Like, I can't fix everything.
Yeah.
I'm one person. And so my job is to help you find a solution. My job is not to fix it. And just remember that.
Kim, that is so good. I mean, there's a couple things. One is about not freaking out with every problem, but also empowering the team. And I feel like this wisdom is born from some experience. So
Oh, yeah.
do you have any story, and it may be in the book, but just that you may have tried to fix too many problems?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I always want to fix everybody's problem. Like, one of the things that has been hardest for me to learn at work, but also in my marriage and as a parent, is somebody comes to you with a big
A broken
problem,
machine.
a broken machine, and you're like, "Bah, bah, 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 bah." And my husband now will say to me, "I do not want you to fix this problem. I just want you to listen." I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
And sometimes when I jump into solutions mode, he's like, "Do you hear how arrogant you sound? Do you think I haven't thought of that?" you know, I'm like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." Or my kids are like, "You have no idea what life is like uh, in high school now." And I'm like, "Do you want to hear what it was like for me?" "No, I do not." So I think a lot of this is realizing your first job in the one-on-one is to listen. And then sometimes a good follow-up question is, do you want me to listen, or do you want me to try to help you?
Yeah.
If you're not sure. But your first job is to listen and to like just express some compassion for what that do not jump into fix it mode. It's not good for the other person. It's not good for your relationship. And what you can't fix all those problems. It's like it's a sort of arrogance to say, I can fix every problem everybody brings me.
Yeah, and it's just gonna lead to burnout and then folks not feeling as empowered.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it takes
absolutely.
some real self-discipline and
It's
self-awareness.
hard. It's like listening. It's really interesting. I read this fascinating book over the weekend about listening. It's a book about music streaming. And the author of the book is made a really good point. It's called Mood Machine, if anybody's
Mm,
interested. But made a really good point that music there's a big difference between doing nothing and not doing nothing. Between listening to music and truly listening to music and not multitasking, not listening to music while you're driving or doing the dishes or, um, you know, having dinner, but like going to listen to music. It's a very active thing, and background music. And so you wanna make sure when you are having these 15-minute one-on-ones, like, that you are fully
yeah.
listening to this person. I know, Amy, you have a lot of words of wisdom on active listening and on mindful listening.
Yeah, I mean, just as you were saying that, that's what was coming to mind was I would so much rather have not even 15 minutes, 5 minutes of someone's full and present attention than an hour meeting where they're not at all paying attention to me. Because now we've just wasted an hour and I feel unimportant. And so
Yeah,
just being really present. And so I think, from what you're saying in the book, it's very interesting with music because I think there's also a sense of like full body listening, like getting signals, not just from the cognition of like, what is the content of what's being said, but also where is it landing in your body? What emotions are
yeah,
underneath there? And the exercise that we'll often do in workshops, the focus listening that you're talking about is where, you might talk for 2 minutes about a certain prompt. And we like to leave the prompts, give you some examples, but you could talk about, what's surprising to you about your work or what's hard for you about radical candor. but you really have the permission to go anywhere because I am not going to interrupt you. Like, and you know that I'm not going to interrupt you because my only job is to be present with you. And what's fascinating when we do that is that there's this moment when people finish their first thought, like, oh, well, what's, hard for me about radical candor is, I don't want to hurt people's feelings or whatever. And then there's this silence. And if you have the discipline to sit in that silence, that discomfort that you talk so often about, Kim, people will often go deeper into something that really matters. And so that's what we're actually like the full body listening, because then it actually drops from like a cognitive connection into more of an emotional resonance with the other person. And I suspect even with the music, that's what's happening, is it's speaking to all the different
Yeah.
parts of your body.
So maybe we should do the exercise. But before we jump in, if you're comfortable, so I would love to try, because it's very hard for me. You're a very good active listener. We'll see if I can do it. So,
Oh,
so maybe I'll
okay.
listen to you, but I'll tell you a story about getting it wrong. So I was working with someone, and this person was having every sort of February had some seasonal affective disorder and was talking to me about this. And this is what not to do. I was like, "Oh, I've got this great place in Hawaii. You should just go there and it'll solve." And this guy was so mad at me. It was like, so don't do that. Like, that's an example of trying to jump into solution mode when I just should have listened.
Yeah. And it's human nature to, and we talked about me not feeling well, so here's my cough. It's human nature. We make connections from our own experience, but that's really much more about our own agenda than about the other person. But you can give yourself a break. That tends to be how we're wired. Uh, okay, so you want me to talk for 2 minutes on the spot and see if you'll listen?
Yeah, about anything that's on your mind.
Okay. Um,
And this, by the way, the listener can do in every one-on-one. Like, this is a great way to spend 2 minutes of a one-on-one, whether it's only a 15-minute one-on-one or an hour-long one-on-one.
to tee it up the way that we like to do for safety is like, me as the speaker, I have permission to say whatever's on my mind, because I can trust that my listener, Kim, is giving me her full attention. I'm aware that this is going to a public audience, so I might, be a little more mindful, but in how deep I'm going to
Yes,
go.
listening in public is a
Listening
different thing.
and speaking in
Talking in
public.
public.
But the point here is, so often, and especially with radical candor in the workplace, we're so intentional about what we're saying and how we're saying it and how is it going to land for the other person. And in this exercise, you want to give the speaker just to throw that all out and just show up however for the 2 minutes. So we'll try this as an experiment. Kim, do you have any prompts for me that you want to throw at me?
I would love to hear about whatever's on your mind.
Okay, whatever's on my mind. Well, what's on my mind is what Kim referenced, which is that I have not been feeling well. Today is Monday, and overnight, Friday into Saturday, I was seized by what I believe is the neurovirus. And I've never, well, I have not felt that sick in probably decades, to the point that I was not even sure I could text people to be like, hey, if you don't hear from me, I can't really get to any liquids and I know I need water, but it seems so hard and so far away. And I'm kind of laughing about it now, but there's such a vulnerability when you are really, really sick. And it's very humbling. And I live alone. And so there's just that moment when you just feel really, really sick and you feel alone. And I am grateful right now to have enough energy to be having this conversation. And it was not that long ago that I felt that way. And I haven't felt that way in so long. So it's just a really interesting touch point. And then, just all the logistics of, okay, well, I've got work on Monday and I'm doing a TED talk coming up soon. And, all of those things that we think about kind of ran through my mind.
I'm so sorry that you were that sick. That is awful. That is really awful.
Well, thank you.
How long, just now I'm gonna break. I'm gonna
Okay,
break.
now how was it to listen?
It was, it was really hard. There were 2 moments when I really
Yeah.
wanted to jump in and tell you my story about feeling
Yeah.
super sick.
What were they?
And I didn't do it. So, but I'll tell you mine in a second.
Okay.
But first, I want to ask a question. One of the things that I was aware of is that I was nodding and saying, I feel like total silence wouldn't have been right. Like for you to say you felt that sick, and for me not to say I'm really sorry in the moment was hard.
Yeah.
Should I have just said I'm really
Oh,
sorry?
no. Well, it's a great note. And also, like in the exercise, we'll kind of acknowledge, like at the like you can nod your head or, just sort of be with the person. But we've set the ground rules. So there's not an expectation of you jumping in.
Okay.
And for whatever it's worth, also, like we're doing this, I'm looking into a camera and also just I have some vision challenges. So it's actually easier for me to like not look at you in the camera. I'm just sort of looking out into the great beyond to all the listeners who now know about the
The norovirus.
drama of the last weekend. And so that's also something very interesting about doing this virtually versus when you're doing this in person and you actually are like looking in their eyes and sort of looking away. So and by the way, some people really like that. They like the disambiguation, if that's the right use of that, like through the media, because they feel like it actually forces them to be more present. So I think, again, like anything, some things are going to land differently for different people. But no, I totally felt you were there with me. So I did not need the words.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'd really encourage people to practice this in their one-on-one, to really try to spend a couple of minutes in every one-on-one just listening and truly not saying anything, and try even, not to be too theatrical with your facial expressions. Like try to remain neutral and open, you know? It's hard. It's surprisingly hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, since I'm allowed to talk, and I can't,
You've been let out of Candor jail.
That it is really hard. I remember one time when I was living in New York, I was living alone, and I got a terrible flu. I was supposed to be gone out of town, so like everybody I knew thought I was out of town. And I got, I don't know what kind of flu, but similar kind of thing. And I had a dog, and I was in a 4th floor walk up. So like I had to walk, like get down the stairs. And I got down to the bottom of the stairs, and it was super hot. It was like a heat wave. And the door had swollen shut.
Oh my
and
God.
I was not strong enough to open. I had to bang on the door and have some stranger walk by, like wrench. It was awful. So for all the folks out there who are getting norovirus or all these other viruses that are going around and are alone, I feel for you. It's really hard.
We are with you. And it's actually really nice to know that we can get through it as well.
Yes. But call for help.
Yeah.
Do call. We do have 911. Hopefully,
yes. No.
If you need it, use it.
I knew I could if I really needed it. So thank you.
Well, and thank you for doing this podcast today. I know it's hard. I know you're better, but it's still hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, and maybe this is a really good message for folks that we can show up at work and do our best. And sometimes it might not be our actual best, but it can be good enough. So thank you for that space. Do you think we're ready for our tips, Kim?
Yeah. Yes, almost ready. I have one other thing. So I said the first 12 minutes of the one-on-one.
Oh, yeah.
The last 3 minutes, I recommend soliciting.
Who said you weren't good at math?
I recommend soliciting feedback at the end. Just ask people on a regular basis, what could I do or stop doing? The last thing, which is not answering the question, is I would consider trying to put a management structure in place. It's an opportunity. There's an opportunity here for people to manage others and to put a little hierarchy in place. I know people have an allergic reaction to that word for lots of good reasons, but there's evidence, and we'll drop it into the show notes. Karen Snyder has done some work that shows when a manager has more than 5 direct reports, they just don't have the time to do the things that are best practice to do as a manager. So So anyway, if possible, it's a great way to create some career opportunities for people to put a little hierarchy in place. It may be against the rules in your company, so that may not be possible.
Now it's time for our Radical Candor checklist, tips to start putting radical candor into practice.
Tip number 1, for the person managing 30 to 50 people, consider implementing an ideas team, a system for listening to suggestions from all levels of an organization. The key purpose is to ensure that everyone's ideas are valued and heard, and some of them actually get acted upon. When you have an ideas team in place, it's important to regularly address suggestions and explain why some ideas are pursued while others are not. But again, the ideas team can do this. The manager doesn't have to do it. All the manager has to do is to promise to take 1 or 2 actions a week. An ideas team can ensure that employees are heard and valued and that their great ideas are put into practice, even when their specific idea isn't implemented. It's important.
Tip number 2. For our listener and other folks in similar situations, walking around the shop floor or an open office is a powerful way to build relationships and stay connected with your team. When you're physically present and walking around, you can naturally pick up on people's mental states or their emotional state. Maybe they seem energized or discouraged, maybe focused or distracted without having to schedule formal check ins. And these impromptu interactions where you're demonstrating genuine curiosity can create opportunities for quick, timely feedback conversations that feel more natural than scheduled meetings.
Tip number 3, make the most of the time you have when you do have one-on-ones by being fully present and focused. In open environments, there can be many distractions, but it's essential to show that you care personally by giving your full attention. Put your phone away, turn off notifications, and position yourself to minimize visual distractions. If you're interrupted, apologize and quickly get back to focusing on your direct report. This demonstrates respect for their time and shows that you value these conversations. By the way, these conversations could happen in the parking lot if it's too noisy on the shop floor.
For more tips, check out our YouTube channel where you can not only listen to this podcast, but also watch dozens of other Radical Candor videos. To get this podcast early and ad-free, go to radicalcandor.com/community. Show notes for this episode are at radicalcandor.com/podcast. Praise in public, criticize in private. So if you like what you hear, we hope you do, please do follow, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really does help. And if you've got criticism, go ahead, email it, podcast@radicalcandor.com. Bye for now.
Take care, everyone. And remember, if you don't like what you're here, we really want to hear about it. So let us know.
Thank you.
Take care.
The Radical Candor podcast is based on the book Radical Candor, Be a Kick-Ass Boss Without Losing Your Humanity by Kim Scott. Episodes are written and produced by Brandy Neal with script editing by me, Amy Sandler. The show features Radical Candor co-founders Kim Scott and Jason Rosoff and is hosted by me, still Amy Sandler. Nick Carissimi is our audio engineer. The Radical Candor podcast theme music was composed by Cliff Goldmacher. Follow us on LinkedIn, Radical Candor the Company, and visit us at radicalcandor.com.